Thank you, Power of Africa, for inviting me to this very important conference. My name is Dr. Sebastian Kopulande. I'm from Zambia, and I am the Chief Executive Officer of the Zambian International Trade and Investment Center. At the same time, I am the President of the Vision Africa Development. This is a non-governmental organization that has been established for the purpose of assisting the development of the African continent using its own resources, both natural and human. I am going to speak today on the subject entitled Policy Imperatives for the Growth of the African Private Sector. I believe that this is a very important subject because as a continent, we live in a world where there are several players that are pursuing different interests. And therefore, our approach to international economic engagement should be founded on the strengths of our own people, on the strength of what we own as a people, and we must pursue informed self-interest while we are getting involved in partnerships with people that we are working with. Africa must appreciate that we have resources. While our friends in the West have got capital, we have resources. We must understand that these resources that we have on our continent belong to us. They are our resources and they must be used to benefit our own people. How then can our own people be in a position to understand how to utilize these resources for themselves? How can our own people understand how best to build their own capacity will ensure that its people have access to country that would be developed. There can be no country that can be a wealthy nation while its people are poor. The wealth of a nation is simply a sum total of the wealth of its people. Therefore, Africa must wake up now. Africa must deliberately develop policies that ensures that its people become wealthy. Its people become millionaires and billionaires. Therefore, I propose that at the continental level, Africa must take a deliberate policy to empower its own people. While we applaud the initiative to establish the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is one of the most creative policy initiatives taken by the African Union in order to promote African economic integration. This economic integration will simply remain on paper if people within Africa do not have the capacity to trade amongst itself. So what do we have to do? First and foremost is to adopt a citizens' empowerment strategy including a financial architecture that supports the growth of small and medium enterprises. As a continent, we must move from the African Continental Free Trade Area, and quickly move to the establishment of a customs union, where we now begin to trade as one single entity. In addition to that, we must move as a continent to create one African resource pool, where anyone from outside that wants to trade with Africa should be able to be confronted with single extractive policies that have been developed by the African people. This will help the divide and rule tactics. This will help to combat the manipulation. This will help to combat the fights against each other on the continent over resources, because the pool is the same. When an investor comes to Zambia for copper, he will find exactly the same policy that he will find when he goes to DRC, so that he does not come to Zambia when he's given specific conditions of investment. He walks away, goes to DRC, and he gets it for free. We must walk away from that and have common resource policy. At national level, while appreciating that in fact every country has got its own challenges and issues to deal with, economic empowerment policy still ranks as first. Particularly, our people have failed to grow their businesses, even to start their businesses, despite the creativeness that they have to start a business. They cannot start a business because, first and foremost, they have no access to capital, no access to finance. Every single African country must ensure that they develop policies and provide financing that will support the growth of small and medium enterprises, that will support the growth of youth enterprises, that will support the growth of women enterprises. That is why for us in Vision Africa Development, we're talking about going towards the establishment of women and youth banks, so that these banks can be able to support the entrepreneurship of some of our people. Other ways would be to establish credit guarantees. Other ways would be to provide low interest loans by specially created financial institutions by governments. Also, at the level of empowerment, the question of ownership of businesses on the African continent must be looked at. Yes, some people say for any investment on the continent, there must be participation, equity participation by a local. Yes, it's a good policy, but is it not only the way that we can empower our people? Our people can even get the shareholding. That shareholding will remain on paper. The foreign investor will manipulate their accounts and declare losses, and at the end of the day, our people end up with nothing. I would rather take affirmative action, an approach where I dangle a carrot. If you come in as a foreign investor and you partner with an African, we shall give you the following incentives. So that joint ownership then becomes the way and means our people are going to acquire the wealth that our continent needs to improve the welfare of our people. I am persuaded that, in fact, any investment by any company in skills development, in education, in sport, and other corporate social responsibility investments should be able to attract incentives for the investor. This will help us accelerate the growth of the private sector. We must also have policies that support SME incubation and SME growth. We must take policies on the continent, in every country, that create a favorable investment for business. We must reduce bureaucratic red tape, streamline our regulations. There are too many regulations, too many certifications to enter into business. There's too many exchange controls. Foreign exchange is something that, well, I can tell you something. In Zambia, it's liberal. We've liberalized foreign exchange. And the rates are market determined. And this we did back in 1993. It's not something that has happened today. We must take policies. We must develop policies that give our people access to the market, particularly access to government contracts. Contracts that are being undertaken for public works should go to our people. Or those companies that have got citizen involvement. That is another incentive for any foreign investor to partner with a local, because then they have access to government business. We need investment by our government in infrastructure development so that we can improve our transportation system to be able to move both raw materials, agricultural goods to the market. We need to improve our telecommunications systems, and there must be investment, clear policy positions on how we are going to invest in the development of our telecommunications system, in the adoption of new technologies to improve the quality of our products and the speed at which we produce. We need to encourage public-private partnerships so that we can help as governments to provide a form of capital to our private sector. Our private sector may undertake certain projects, but they are impeded by the fact access to an area in which they want to do a project mining. May not be there. The infrastructure may not be there. These are, in my view, some of the policies that Africa needs to develop and implement. Because with these policies, we are going to have these are just some, there are more. These are just some that can help empower our people. Because as long as our own people are empowered, you are guaranteed that their profits, the money they make from their business, will be reinvested back in the country in other activities. Yet, if you empower non-Africans, that money they make, the profits will go back to Europe, America, or wherever. We as Africans must be deliberate. We must take affirmative action. And the policy must be targeted at pursuing our own self-interest as a people. When we engage with our colleagues coming from abroad, it is to look for partnership. It is not to look for relationship where we are the horse and somebody else is the rider. African governments must realize that unless they can empower their people, they will not be able to deliver services effectively, because the extent to which they will be able to mop up revenue for them to provide the services to their people will be encumbered. You have heard stories on Africa, where today, despite the prices, the high prices of minerals, we are giving incentives to foreign mining houses. This is a condemnation of the poor of Africa to perpetual poverty by their own government. Because there are many of our people who cannot access private hospitals, private schools. But if you don't have, as a government, sufficient revenue